Dads. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
Well, the vacation is over for Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints. Training camp begins this week. Welcome to another edition of your Been There, Done That podcast. I am Mike Nabors. I'm going to bring in producer Justin Thomas and my partner Scott Shanle in just a bit. But I want to tell you this, Saints fans. When we promise you something, we deliver. We promised you something a few weeks ago. We're going to have current players. We brought you Cam Jordan. We brought you Will Lutz. We brought you Teron Armstead. We're going to bring you former players. Well, how about this? We just taped an interview with the one and only Archie Manning. And yeah, you know, he talks about his career as a Saints player, the frustrations of it, but he also gives us great stories of the first family in American football, the Manning family. Great stuff about his sons, Peyton Manning and Eli, and of course, Cooper, and his grandsons. You have the second generation. Archie Manning is starting to make waves in the New Orleans area. So we touch them all with Archie Manning. I'll bring in Scott Shanle. Your first impressions of Archie Manning, to me, there's so much we could have gotten to, but I feel like, Scott, that I wanted to ask him questions that he hasn't been asked, or kind of variations of them, because he's been asked everything.
Yeah, he really has, especially when you look at the success of both of his boys. And obviously his successful career, he's had the gamut of questions thrown at him. And now you throw on the new element of having a grandson who's kind of everyone's thinking going to be the next in line. So he's faced all the questions. It's hard to really throw him off base. But I think the one thing that always impresses me and a lot of people about Archie Manning is just how cool and calm and collected he is, and really just a pleasure to talk to, a pleasure to meet, and he's always been that way. A huge ambassador for the New Orleans Saints team. Even though his boys have went on and had success in other organizations and franchises, he's still Mr. New Orleans, Mr. New Orleans Saint, and I think that's always been really cool about Archie Manning.
Yeah, when you meet somebody like Archie Manning, you never know what to expect. And I worked with him my first year at Cox Sports Television doing sidelines for Saints preseason games. It was Tim Brando and Archie Manning upstairs, and it was me downstairs. And we talk about that first year of the Peyton era. Of course, Shanle, you know, we've cataloged it so much in our podcast prior to this. And, you know, the funny thing about all of that with Archie Manning was, you know, I didn't know what to expect. But, boy, when you talk to Archie Manning, there's absolutely no ego. I mean, you really feel like, it's not the legend that you've heard about, because he treats you just like he would anybody else. And, Justin, I know you were part of the interview too. What were your takeaways from it? Because there's so many exciting things to touch on coming up. I know Saints fans, you're going to enjoy it.
It's just how humble he is. He has, he's so well known and well regarded amongst Saints fans, his two sons and what they've done in the NFL. And yet he just seems so down to earth. He doesn't want to be, he's just very modest about what he's accomplished, what his children have accomplished, and how proud he is of them as well. That's what I liked.
And Shanle, you have children, and I think you can relate to Archie. I was just, one of the questions was, could you have ever predicted the success that they would have, especially following your NFL career? And what didn't work out the way you wanted it to, but man, his sons really, future Hall of Famers and Super Bowl MVPs, but he always maintained that he never expected that. He just wanted them to do what they wanted to do. And I know as a parent, you can appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. I think, especially with my own background, my parents, neither one of them played sports. My dad grew up on a farm, but here I was at 5 and 6 years old walking around the football, just dreamt of being a football player. And I think as a parent, the one thing you try to do is not to push your dreams and hopes and aspirations onto your kids, and let them follow their own passion. And obviously for him, his passion was football, and it turned out that both of his boys were very, very passionate about football. And I think the cool thing about that is when those things align, you can give them a heads up of what they're about to face, and give them all sorts of insight and information from your experiences. And I think when you look back at both Eli and Peyton, when Eli finally is done, it's hard to find another family who's contributed more to the game of football than the Manning family.
All right, usually we have a big introduction for our guest, but really this guest doesn't need an introduction. Of course, the legendary quarterback at Ole Miss, a Saints Hall of Famer, a Saints member of the Ring of Honor, and of course the patriarch of the first family of football. Ladies and gentlemen, we bring in Archie Manning. Archie, I really appreciate your time. I know you're busy. So many people say, when's Drew Brees going to slow down and when's Tom Brady going to slow down? They said it for years about your son, Peyton Manning. When is Archie Manning going to slow down? I mean, it seems like I saw you at SEC Media Days recently. I know you're still busy working every day. You have a lot of business interests. You still stay pretty active, don't you?
I stay active, but I have cut back a little bit. I've tried to cut back on travel. I was just getting on too many commercial airlines, and that's kind of hard. I've had a little work done the last few years. Just it happens, and some back surgeries and a couple of knee replacements, that type of thing. But I'm still active and still busy. I really enjoyed. I was honored to be invited over to Birmingham for the SEC Media Days and to join. I'm indebted to the commissioner. To join Steve Spurrier and Herschel Walker over there and kind of talk about a lot of old times and about some years back in the SEC. That was really fun.
Archie, we'll get into your career and little Saints perspective in a little bit, but you mentioned Herschel Walker in the SEC Media Days. I thought one of the great kind of tongue-in-cheek stories out of that was you almost named Eli Herschel Walker. Give me the story behind that.
Well, Herschel and I were together a few years ago, and kind of a similar thing. We were doing a Q&A in front of a corporate group, and that just came to me, but it actually happened. So we're all the way back to early January of 1981. Of course, Herschel on January 1, they beat Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, and so Olivia, my wife of 48 years, was pregnant with Eli. And it was kind of during the holidays. I'm playing with the Saints, but was through the practice early. So I took the boys down to the Superdome to see Georgia practice. And of course, they got to meet Herschel. And so Cooper at this time was probably 7 years old, almost 7, and Peyton was 5. And so took them to practice. And, they were pretty impressed with Herschel and got to meet him and so forth. So then we're back home. And Eli was born on January 3rd, so Olivia's just 2 days away from having this baby. But I'm just visiting with the boys a little bit and saying, look, we got this baby coming. What do you think we ought to name it? And they had a couple of suggestions. Peyton did. But Eli, Cooper jumped out and just said, how about Herschel Walker Manning? And we thought that was pretty funny. It didn't fly with Olivia, but anyway, Herschel does love that story.
Peyton was going to be Peyton, whether it was a boy or a girl, correct?
Yeah, it would have been. That name flies for a boy or girl. We know a lot of girls. Let me tell you, there were starting around 1994. There were a lot of babies born in East Tennessee named Peyton, whether it be boy or girl. It was a funny story. When Peyton went to Tennessee, I don't think Tennessee had beaten Alabama in 10 years. They lost a real close game his freshman year. But his sophomore year, they beat Alabama and really whooped them pretty good in Birmingham, scored a lot of points. And that game was always on the second Saturday in October back then. And something came out in the Knoxville paper later that month in Knoxville County, there were 19 babies born named Peyton. So that was kind of an unusual thing going on in those days.
I have a good friend. She's from Thibodeau. She named her son Peyton after Peyton Manning. So I'm sure you've heard those stories for years and years and years. Archie, I want to talk about your sons in a little bit, but I want to go back to 2006 when I worked with you and Tim Brando. It was right before it was the preseason before Sean Payton's first year. And Scott Shanle isn't with us today, but obviously Scott Shanle joined the team during that preseason. It was such a crazy preseason, so many moving parts. And I remember Tim Brando and I met with Sean Payton before that first game. And he told us, you may want to watch out for this guy. It was Marcus Colston. going back to that first preseason, I don't know how much you knew about Sean Payton. You knew a little bit about Drew Brees, I guess, dating back to his Purdue days when he knew Peyton. But could you have ever imagined this run would still be going on in New Orleans, to your thought process back in 2006 to what it is now?
Well, certainly you wouldn't envision that. But I remember, of course, I did preseason games for a long time. I started doing, right after I retired, started doing radio, Saints radio, and then we picked up, that'd probably been 1986 or so, 87 or so, started doing the Saints preseason games. But certainly not at that point. I well remember when Drew came to the Saints and the conditions, the situation, and with his shoulder injury and all those things. So, no, you would never envision that how that's gone. But it's been a great journey. So it's a world championship along the way, and actually close a few more times. A lot of great play and good solid football for just years and years here in New Orleans.
Archie, I know you're the kind of person that doesn't want to let people do their thing a little bit, and I think that's the way your relationship has been with Drew. But I do a post-game show with him after every game, and he has told me on several occasions, I really appreciate this text from Archie. It was great that he reached out after I set this record, or maybe before a big game. I know you and Drew live close together in the Garden District in New Orleans. How would you characterize your relationship since he's been in New Orleans?
Well, I got to know Drew. I'm trying to think maybe the first time. I'd tell you the first time I met Drew. I was speaking over in Austin, Texas at a National Football Foundation, their local chapter. We're having a Mac Brown, I believe, had invited me over there. And so they were honoring a high school athlete that night. I guess usually the Football Foundation, which I've been very involved with through the years, honors scholar athletes. So Drew must have been one of the scholar athletes that night. I met him, talked to him, and I just remember, I knew he was had a real good high school career. And I was a little surprised that he was going off to Purdue, coming out of Austin, Texas. I didn't ask the question. I didn't ask. I didn't say, why aren't you going to Texas, or why aren't you going to Texas A&M? But and I've still never asked him that, but I've kind of presumed he got overlooked a little bit like that. So that was a big mistake on several Texas schools' part. Of course, we know the story. He goes on to Purdue and has an unbelievable career there, and gets them in the Rose Bowl. And but I think that has a little something to do with the fire in Drew. He's not the tallest quarterback that's ever played. He got overlooked a little bit there, and he's very, very motivated to do well. Of course, he's just had an unbelievable Hall of Fame career. But also, now, while he was at Purdue, Peyton was a young player with the Indianapolis Colts, and I well remember Drew waiting outside the dressing room one day after a Colts game, and hooked him up with Peyton. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I think we were broadcasting. We were doing a TV preseason game of the Saints and the Colts, and the game was in Purdue. They played at Purdue on a Saturday night. Wow. We did the game, and so I remember seeing Drew and some of his teammates at that time. So that's kind of, got to know him actually, met him in high school, right out of high school, and then when he was in college. And then they played, the Colts played the Chargers a couple of times when he was there with the Chargers before come to the Saints. So, yeah, we don't live very far from each other. His boys go to Newman School, where my kids went when they're here in the fall. But he's a busy man. I know a little something about the position. I don't bother Drew. I've always told him I'm around for him if he needs anything from me, but I do like to keep up with him. I send him an encouraging or congratulating text from time to time. And my wife actually sees Brittany a good bit. They go to the same exercise class.
You know, those old football games you used to have with the boys in the front yard, when I saw the Brees boys wrestle each other on the sideline at the Pro Bowl, kind of was reminiscent of the Manning boys back in the day.
That kind of reminded me. I saw that. That kind of reminded me of all those times and the good times we had in the front yard. I know he's having a great time with those boys. Then he had that little girl, which it was kind of kind of turned the tide on. And our family, Eli had 3 little girls, and then had a little boy this past February. So just the opposite of what Drew. But Drew, he's got 4 beautiful, healthy kids, and they're a wonderful family.
How would a daughter have mixed in with the Manning family after Eli? How would that have played out?
Oh, it was fine. Those girls are they're so much fun. I don't know if this little boy's got much of a chance now with these three older sisters, but we were just up there visiting, and the main thing, they're all healthy, so that's a wonderful blessing.
No doubt about it. Let's talk about your career and a little bit about Sean Payton too. You know, if Sean Payton would have been your head coach and you would have had a little more talent around you, I know you're very modest, Archie, but I got to ask you this. What would your career would have been like with an innovative coach like that, a little more talent around you? Do you ever play that game in your mind about what could have been at some points if you would have had that?
No, not really. I had a lot of coaches. We changed coaches a lot. And but the game was different back then. Just everything about the game was different. But now I love to talk about Sean Payton. I've known Sean a long time. Kept up with him even when I remember the young coach with the New York Giants, and then of course when he was in Dallas. But Again, I try not to bother Sean. He's nice enough. He always invites me out for a training camp day in August each year, and I enjoy that, watching him work. But I followed Sean obviously close, being the head coach of the Saints, and I'd say even 7, 8, 9 years ago, I would rate the top 4 or 5 play callers in the game, and I put Sean right in there. I've always thought he's a great play caller. Now, a lot of these the ones I had in my list back then, like Mike Holgram, I thought was a great play caller. Mike McCarthy was a great play caller. But now, of course, Andy Reid is, but Sean, he doesn't have to take a back seat to anyone. He's just a unbelievable offensive mind. I love the way he mixes up his offense, the way he uses what he has. He's creative. He's demanding, and he's just, I think, a heck of a head football coach, but also just a great offensive play caller.
Archie, not many people fall into this category, but you certainly do. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about Archie Manning. And I think a big part of that is not only you've raised a great family, but when you played New Orleans, you didn't make the playoffs. You guys never had a winning record, but you never complained. You always talked to the media after the games. But looking back at your Saints career, what really sticks out for you? Was it a case of what could have been in different situations, or how do you look back at your Saints career?
Well, when you really look at, when you're playing, you don't know everything going on, and you're trying to have some success. You're trying to win ball games. We still were basically a young franchise when I came. I came here in the 5th year of the franchise, and it kind of changed philosophy from their initial 3 or 4 years, which they took a lot of the expansion players, had a lot of older veteran players, kind of an over the hill gang type approach. So they'd already got rid of their first coach, Tom Fears, and I got drafted by the second coach here, a guy named J.D. Roberts. But in the next 12 years, going on 12 years when I got traded, we changed coaches, about 5 more times. Wow. And of course, in several times, the worst situation you can have in football is when you fire a coach during the season and have an interim. It's just that's just the worst side of football, because the interim coach is just there probably temporarily. The staff is not going to be there next year, and they're wondering where their next job's going to be, and it's just a terrible way to play football. So, but you kind of keep hoping that the next guy is going to be the right combination and make it happen. Now, I'm not blaming it on coaches. We really kind of unstable in the front office too. It changes, a lot of changes there, just constantly changing management, changing people. So, and when you do that, and then you change coaches, you change staff, you change philosophy, and you change players. You just got players coming and going. So that was kind of the story. I'm not bitter about it. I'm not making any excuses. That's just the way it was. It was true in other places too. You're just looking for that stability. And it was just a long time coming for the Saints.
This isn't the way that you are, but in this day and age, when players get in bad situations, they demand a trade, they want out. I mean, look at the NBA, for goodness sake. I mean, it's become kind of crazy year after year. Was there ever a low point with the Saints that you wanted to get out and request a trade, or did you it seems to me that you kept thinking it was going to get better?
Well, things was different in those days. Now there wasn't free agency, and there wasn't movement like it is today. But yeah, I guess sometimes you could. I actually had people that came to me and advised me and just said, you got to get out of there. You got to ask to be traded. But I actually had a good relationship with our owner, John Meekum Jr. John was really good to me. I thought John wanted to win. He was just kind of looking for that right combination of management and coaches. And I think, we enjoyed the city. I enjoyed the fans here. And it was something about that we'd kind of been here and been through the struggles and the lean times. Now, if we get this right leadership group in place, it'd be a great place to win, fun place. So I just, I don't know. I'm not sure. Sometimes you can go ask to be traded, and it can be as bad or worse somewhere else. I was just, my thoughts were trying to play my position and hope we could get things kind of stabilize and get things on the rise and win some football games.
That's very interesting. We're going to end with a fun segment, but before that, I want to ask you a few questions about your family. If somebody would have told you in the late 80s that, Archie, I know things were kind of tough as a professional, but you know what? Your sons are going to be great NFL players. They're going to be future Hall of Famers. They're going to win Super Bowls. I mean, what would you have told somebody back in the late 80s if they would have kind of given you a sneak preview or a forecast?
No, I just, that never was a plan. We just tried to raise kids. Living we've always felt blessed that we had healthy children, we had good children, and we had a lot of fun raising those kids. And it wasn't trying to raise quarterbacks or raise college or pro football players, just trying to raise kids. It was a little unique, whereas I was a quarterback of a professional football team, and we're living in the city, so you kind of wearing a hat within the city, a little bit of a celebrity status. So we tried to dance around that and not put our children into that. Tried to be as normal as we could be and put them in normal situations at school, on the playground, or activities, or whatever things we were doing here in New Orleans. Or it would get back to Mississippi a lot in those days too. So no, I never, that. It just evolved and happened. I was a football player, and they were around it.
Yeah.
They liked sports early, which I think is healthy for kids if they like it. I'm proud to say they played all sports and kind of went from sport to sport, and they liked them all. But it never was any kind of incentive out there or any project on our part for them to be college or professional players.
Now, Archie, I've worked with you. I've never met your wife, but I've met all three of your sons. And I think what's interesting about having kids, I have two daughters, they're completely different. I think in a lot of ways your sons are different. I sat next to Cooper on a flight one time and he was funny, and we know how great of a personality he has. Peyton's funny, but he's very serious, and Eli's very laid back. Of those three personalities, what is Archie Manning? Are you a little bit of all three?
I guess because they are different, and no one's as funny. No one is as funny as Cooper. He's always been funny. He's always fun to be around. He keeps everybody loose. Peyton's actually serious, but if he's supposed to be funny, he tries to accomplish, be good at what he does. So if he's doing a commercial that's supposed to be funny, he wants it to be funny. And then you're right, Eli's laid back. His buddies call him Easy E. So they're really different people. Maybe a little bit. I don't know what I am, but I know we feel blessed. And I think most people like it. Your children are not going to be alike. They're just going to be different. I think that's good. And that's healthy.
That's what makes life fun. All right, before we get to our final segment, which I think you'll have fun with, I got to ask this question, Archie. We have the next generation. We have Archibald Manning coming up through the ranks. Your namesake, your grandson, Cooper's son, already hearing that he has potential as a quarterback. I know you as a protective grandson, I'm sure you don't want to get too crazy in the hype yet, but how much fun is it watching your grandson do his thing as a quarterback now?
Well, it's been fun. They never played playground tackle football or anything like that. They played flag football. Along with basketball and baseball and other sports. His little brother plays lacrosse. But he played real football really for the first time, a couple of years ago in middle school there at Newman. He was a quarterback and did well. They had good teams, won a bunch of games, and he really likes it. So he's developed, he's grown, he's taller, and so it looks like this year, he'd be a ninth grader, and he's going to get to play some ball there at Newman. So I went to my first. I never had been to a 7-on-7 tournament, so I've been to 3 or 4 of those this summer. That's kind of interesting, and gosh, great experience for young players to be able to do that in the summertime as they prepare for the season. So we're going, we're just kind of playing this thing down and letting it. We want him to. I've always told my kids to have fun in football. We want him to have fun. It'd be fun for him, and we'll try to not do too much of the hoopla and just try. It'll be if he plays. It's it'll young players, young quarterbacks. I always say it's kind of like a yo-yo. It's up and down and up and down, but that's okay. That's the way football's probably supposed to be.
I wanted to be sensitive to that, but he doesn't go by Archie. He's Archibald, right? There's a difference?
He's Arch. He's Arch.
Oh, Arch. Yeah. Arch. Okay. I want to make sure we're – and before we go, though, I know you like to have fun. Your sons are always fun interviews. We have one more segment, Archie. Justin, our producer, you know what time it is. From Marcus Colston to Drew Brees, all the Saints players we've had throughout the years, whether it be TV or on this podcast, they've had to go through more likely Archie Manning. 3 hypotheticals. I know you've answered a million questions from the media, so this should be no problem for you. But your first more likely hypothetical, more likely when you were a Saints player back in the day, if you could pick a peer to join the Saints that you never played with in the NFL, just to join the team, who would it be?
Who would I have picked in the NFL to be on the Saints team?
Yeah, back when you played, it could be anybody playing with you in the NFL when you were a player.
Oh, maybe Walter Payton.
That's not bad.
I thought he was probably about as complete. I thought he was about as good a football player as I ever saw.
Any receiver stand out for you that you would have picked?
Oh, there was a lot of great ones. Oh, yeah. My God. I played with James. I played in a Pro Bowl with James Lofton.
There you go.
He was unbelievably talented. Cowboys had really good receivers. Drew Pearson, Tony Hill. Well, they had outstanding receivers. I played Ahmad Rashad in a Pro Bowl. He was everything you want. True professional.
Awesome. All right, second more likely. Archie Manning, who's the best player you ever played against as a professional?
I played against. I thought Bob Lilly was about as consistent as any defensive player I went against. Now I broke in. We were in the division with the Rams, so we played in those early years. Played the Rams twice a year, and Deacon Jones was the ultimate pass rusher. He could really bring it.
Oof.
But I broke in with Jack Youngblood, and I played against Jack more than anyone else. I remember when he went in the Hall of Fame and they took the Hall of Famers over the Pro Bowl, I told Peyton was going to the Pro Bowl. I said, you tell Youngblood he wouldn't have got in that Hall of Fame if he hadn't got to play against me twice a year. So he was really outstanding player.
I did an event with Jack Youngblood, and I went to Florida, and he's such a legend playing with a broken leg in that Rams-Bucks game. We had fun talking about that. But he still looks like, I wouldn't mess with Jack Youngblood even today. He looks still pretty intimidating.
Jack's a good friend. Jack and I broke in the league. We played against each other in Week 1, 1971, our rookie year, and just coincidence, 15 years later, we retired on this very exact day, the same day. And
wow, how about that?
He's a good friend, but he really was a great player.
All right, last more likely question. I know you're media savvy. You're gliding through these, and humor me with this one too. I know you don't have a favorite son. We've talked about how your sons are different, but I'm interested to get your answer on this. I asked your buddy Jim Henderson kind of a different question on if he had a cross-country ride, if he was leaving New Orleans and had to drive to California, which Saints head coach would he pick to ride shotgun? He told me Bum Phillips. I've asked Saints players, which teammate would you pick to ride shotgun? I've gotten all kinds of different answers. But humor me on this, Archie. If you had to pull out of your driveway in downtown New Orleans and drive to California, which Manning son would you pick to ride shotgun with you?
Oh, I can't. I can't go wrong. Any one of the three. Any one of the three. I'll take a grandson. I got the three of those, and we've already talked about Arch and his little brother Hyde, and then we have one now named Charlie. So I'll take Charlie with me. That's Eli's new baby.
Okay, Charlie's the winner. Charlie's the winner. Well, I knew you'd be politically correct, and I can't blame you. That's why you're such a good dad. Before I say goodbye, you mentioned Arch, your grandson, the passing academy. Mm-hmm. Boy, it's really, if you're a quarterback, you got to be there. Before we let you go, all the who's who of college quarterbacks have been through the Manning Passing Academy since you started. And this has grown. I know you're so proud of it. Has there been a guy who's playing well now that was kind of an under the radar guy in that passing academy that you look back and say, boy, he really grew after that?
We had we just finished our 24th year at Manning Passing Academy. So we didn't always, but now every year we have 40 college quarterbacks that come in as counselors. I tell you, they are these kids today can really throw the football. Herbert from Oregon, Trevor Lawrence from Clemson's everything. You say they just, but it's also impressive, and I should have my list in front of me. I can't remember them all. With some really, some of the small college kids, really good quarterbacks. A young man from North Texas State really throws the ball good. But I'll give you one right there at where we have our camp. Watch out again this year for Chase Forcade at Nicholls State. He's a heck of a little quarterback.
There you go. Well, listen, Archie, I know you're very busy. We took almost a half hour of your time. We covered the gamut from Brees and Peyton to Ahmad Rashad to Jack Youngblood to Arch, and then Charlie, your grandson. Enjoy college football season. It's back. We really enjoyed stepping back in memory lane with you and talking about your family and what a great life you've had. And I really treasured this half hour, and thanks so much for your time.
That was my pleasure. Glad to be with you. Take care.
Well, that was a pleasure. A half hour with Archie Manning. I will always treasure that. I tried to throw more likely at him, Scott, but it was rapid fire. He's a media savvy father, grandfather. I mean, Archie Manning, he handled everything we threw at him there.
Yeah, and that's not surprising. I think when you look at the gamut of things that he's faced question-wise, he's probably heard it all, and he's probably been asked it all. he's used to dodging those questions like he used to dodge defenders. And I think a lot of people they need to YouTube Archie Manning and go back and watch his playing career, because I think even guys my age don't appreciate what he did for the game and how good of an athlete he was. People see Peyton and Eli out there throwing the ball. They don't realize Archie was kind of electrifying with the feet as well.
Yeah, he was a different quarterback than his sons, and he's too modest to say this. We tried to ask him there about what he would have been like in Sean Payton's offense, but the back of his mind with the rules the way they are now and the offenses and everything, and if he had the supporting cast, I mean, he talked about wanting players like Drew Pearson, Ahmad Rashad, and Walter Payton. It'd be interesting to go back in time and give him some weapons and give him a coach that could call plays like a Sean Payton and see what he could do back in the day.
It would be interesting. I think a lot of those guys who played in the previous eras look at today's football, especially let's just talk about the quarterback position since we're pertaining to Archie. Those guys used to get rocked, and I mean it was forearm shivers to the face mask. It was everything went, and those guys' careers would not last as long as the quarterbacks now, and the numbers that the guys are putting up now are much more impressive because of the rules. So it would be interesting to see just how today's football would have been translated back then, and with some protection of the quarterback.
Yeah, to me, the quarterback who's kind of on that equator between the new school and the old school is Troy Aikman, because he got banged up so much he had to retire. And I think if he would have played in the new era, I mean, he's a Hall of Famer anyway. But guys like that, to me, and you're going way back, and I agree wholeheartedly. But it's crazy how the league has changed, and these quarterbacks have to be very jealous of guys like Drew Brees who have taken full advantage of the situation. Well, we're almost done, but Justin, we have a little bit extra, don't we? Yeah, a little lanyard time, a little extra from each of us. Justin, Thomas, what do you have for us this week?
Well, with football right around the corner about to start, one of my favorite parts of this time of the year, the last couple of years, has been the release of so many great shows on football. I know, Mike, you don't watch it, but All or Nothing came on, or started, I should say, last Friday. And that follows the Panthers this year. I love that show. It's followed some great teams the last couple of years. We got Hard Knocks about to start up. And even though it's not NFL related, Last Chance U on Netflix is another great show on the kind of inside of football in junior college. So 3 great series to watch if you like football to get you ready for the new season.
And Hard Knocks with John Gruden is going to be must-see TV. Hard Knocks is must-see TV anyway, but with John Gruden, I got to see that All or Nothing. Shanle, have you seen all those? I know you've seen Hard Knocks.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just finished up with All or Nothing with Carolina, and
oh really?
Yeah, and it was good. It was really good. I wish they would put it out earlier, because you're looking at a season almost a full year removed from that season. But I found it interesting on that show. Just first of all, I think they have a lot of good guys in that organization. You watch them, the way they interact with one another, get along. It reminds me a lot of our locker room. But the one thing that really opened my eyes is Cam Newton. You see him on field. You see after bad plays, he kind of saunders and droops and pouts, and you think, how's this guy a franchise quarterback? Why do they invest so much time in him? Why don't they just find somebody else? But they ask him, they run everything through him. I think he has a joy for life. I mean, I have a whole new outlook on Cam Newton after looking at those 8 episodes, just because I know he pouts, I know he does some of those things, but I think he means a lot more to that organization inside that locker room than I had even realized.
We both trust the judgment of Roman Harper. And I remember asking Roman Harper about Cam Newton, and he said the same things you just said. So in terms of character, I always trust Roman Harper. So that kind of changed my opinion of Cam Newton. So that's very interesting. I got to check that out. But yeah, I can't wait for Hard Knocks either. But I'm going to try to catch up on all that in the coming weeks here. All right, Mr. Shanle, do you have a lanyard for us?
Yeah, I got a little bit of something. Tonight I'm going to see Lion King, taking the kids to see Lion King, the remake. We'll see what that's like compared to the original. But I
Such a good dad.
I'll have the reviews next week. We'll see exactly.
Can't wait.
Yeah, how that turns out. But my other thing, Simba. I recently saw an article that the Dallas Cowboys, are the world's most valuable sports franchise, valued at $5 billion.
Wow.
it just blows my mind when you think about that number. A sports franchise worth $5 billion. The Yankees were second at $4.6 billion, and then the other two were soccer teams. Jerry Jones has been a master marketer. He hasn't won anything meaningful since the 1990s, and yet the Cowboys are on all these primetime games. The estimates were that AT&T Stadium generates $340 million in sponsorship and seating revenue. That's twice as much as any other team. He has done an amazing job with branding that logo, and they don't win anything. And I played for the Cowboys. I was a part of everything, and it's such a business that if they ever got somebody in there who was all about winning and building that thing back into a Super Bowl champion, I don't know what the organization would be worth, but it just blows my mind that they're worth $5 billion.
And Shanley's bringing stats to the table for Lanyap, so I'm going to feel kind of lame. Yeah, it's amazing. They're almost like the Yankees without the trophies. You know, they're America's team. A lot of people love or hate the Cowboys, kind of like they do the Yankees. But, yeah, it's crazy how they haven't won a Super Bowl in so long. But, you know, perception, I think if you're like a global perception, if you weren't an American, you would think that they'd won 2 or 3 in the last 10 years, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. They're viewed as the way the Patriots should be viewed. When you look at, you know, to me, hey, I want to say the Saints are America's team. When the Saints are winning, I've run into more people that are like, I just find myself rooting for the Saints. I want them to have success. But the Patriots, when you think about what they've done, they should be viewed in the light that the Cowboys are viewed at. They should be all the primetime games. You should be watching Tom Brady. When you win that many championships, you should reap the rewards somehow, some way. But yet, every Sunday, we're sitting there watching primetime football, and it's the Dallas Cowboys that we're watching, and they haven't won anything.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Well, my Lanyap, I'm going to kind of bring it full circle in this podcast. We had Archie Manning for the bulk of the podcast. I'm really looking forward to this, guys. You talk about All or Nothing. You talk about Hard Knocks. Have you seen Peyton's Places, the series that's going to run on ESPN? Have you guys heard about this?
Yes, I have seen that. And I think I sent a tweet out, the same thing you're talking about. I said, if this is what we get for Peyton Manning not being a Monday Night Football analyst, I'll take it all day because it looked pretty good.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I mean, NFL is celebrating its 100th anniversary, 100 years of football in the NFL. And Peyton Manning, living the charmed life that he has lived, and he's earned it. I mean, the guy's worked hard. I'm not saying that. But, boy, he puts himself in the right positions. I mean, to me, he had all kinds of opportunities after football. But NFL Films approached him, and they wanted him to kind of go back in time and talk to the key figures in the NFL. I mean, I think he drinks champagne with the Dolphins, how they do after every team loses and their undefeated streak is alive. I saw a clip where he does stick 'em with Fred Biletnikoff, the former Raiders wide receiver. He learns to be a cornerback with Deion Sanders. I mean, it's a virtual history of the NFL through the eyes of Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning's the perfect one to do it because, A, he's a future Hall of Famer, and B, he's going to take this seriously like he takes everything else seriously. And C, though, is he likes to have fun. So it's not going to be all serious. It's going to be fun. It's going to be informative. And I can't wait. The debut, I think, starts this Friday, July 26th, and they're going to keep running them throughout the football season. So I can't get enough of the NFL Films. I mean, they do the Hard Knock stuff too. If the NFL Films puts on anything, I'm aboard with it. I mean, the Sable family has left us, but they left a legacy, kind of like the Manning family, where they taught people how to put together quality productions, and NFL Films just keeps on going. Shanle, I can't wait to see this.
It's going to be fantastic. The one thing about Peyton Manning, when you look at the on the field, kind of the general, no nonsense quarterback, championship winning quarterback. But I think what opened everyone's eyes to Peyton Manning is when he went on Saturday Night Live and kind of showed his comedy side. That opened up a whole new world, and that's why we're going to get to see this. I can't wait. I think it's going to be outstanding because, like you said, he's going to be going into it very meticulous and wanting it to be perfect, but then we get to see that comedic release side of him that we saw on SNL, so it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, to me, this is the NFL does some things wrong, but this is something they're doing right. They picked the perfect guy to chronicle the history, and I can't wait. Well, listen, for Scott Shanle, for our producer Justin Thomas, and for the great Archie Manning, boy, he's very busy. We really appreciate his time. That was a half hour that I'll always remember, and I hope Saints fans, you can kind of spread the word. We're on all the platforms, iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Google. We're growing every week, and Training camp starting up. We're going to have guests. We're optimistic we're going to get Drew Brees and Sean Payton on very soon in the coming weeks and months too. So keep it here on your Been There, Done That podcast. I'm Mike Nabors. We'll talk to you again next week.